Use an expression twice in one line, as a condition and for string formatting? I find that in lots of different projects I'm writing a lot of code where I need to evaluate a moderately complex, possibly costly to evaluate, expression and then do something with it, for example use it for string formatting, but only if the expression is true/non-none. For example, in lots of places I end up doing something like the following. Which I guess is basically a special case of the more general problem of wanting to return some function of an expression, but only if that expression is true, i.e. but without retyping the expression, or reevaluating it, in case it's a costly function call. Obviously the required logic can be achieved easily enough in various long-winded ways, for example by splitting the expression into multiple statements and assigning the expression to a temporary variable, but that's a bit grungy and since this seems like quite a generic problem, and since Python is pretty cool, especially for functional stuff, I wondered if there's a nice, elegant, concise way to do it? My current best options are either defining a short-lived lambda to take care of it, better than multiple statements, but a bit hard to read. Or writing my own utility function like. But since I'm doing this in lots of different code bases, I'd much rather use a built-in library function or some clever Python syntax if such a thing exists.
I like one-liners, definitely. But sometimes they are the wrong solution. In professional software development, if the team size is greater than 2, you spend more time on understanding code someone else wrote than on writing new code. The one-liners presented here are definitely confusing, so just do 2 lines, even though you mentioned multiple statements in your post. This is clear, concise, and everybody immediately understands what's going on here.
Python doesn't have expression scope. Is there a Python equivalent of the Haskell-let, presumably because the abuses and confusion of the syntax outweigh the advantages? If you absolutely have to use an expression scope, the least worst option is to abuse a generator comprehension.
You could define a conditional formatting function once, and use it repeatedly. Usage.
After hearing the responses, thanks guys, I'm now convinced there's no way to achieve what I want in Python without defining a new function, or lambda function, since that's the only way to introduce a new scope. For best clarity I decided this needed to be implemented as a reusable function, not lambda, so for the benefit of others, I thought I'd share the function I finally came up with, which is flexible enough to cope with multiple additional format string arguments, in addition to the main argument used to decide whether it's to do the formatting at all. It also comes with Python doc to show correctness and illustrate usage. If you're not sure how the quarks thing works, just ignore it. It's just an implementation detail and was the only way I could see to implement an optional default value equals quark following the variable list of format string arguments. Presumably, you want to do this repeatedly to build up a string. With a more global view, you might find that filter, or itertools.ifilter, does what you want to the collection of values. You'll wind up with something like this. Using none as the first argument for filter indicates to accept any true value. As a concrete example with a simple expression. Depending on how you're calculating the values, it may be that an equivalent list or generator comprehension would be more readable.
you want us to tell, please try.